Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alan's Viewpoints. Got another topic today. One, kind of one of my favorite ones. It happens to be energy. I think we need to find great ways of producing energy. I'm not a big fan of windmills. I do believe the windmills, rather than having I'm be okay with a vertical style, which means it looks more like a pole with the fins spinning. They operate in higher winds. I think it's a double helix is the type of format that it would be, and it would spin based on the wind. It blows and it spins at lower winds and cycles and doesn't really have an upper limit. I'm sure there is, but the upper limit isn't as great, is much greater than the standard fan windmills that we currently have that dot our landscape, chew up piles of land, and produce vibrations that bug people and hurt their ears and disrupts wildlife, killing birds and things. Um, if we use the helix style, which is just a pole with some fins running around it, and there's no reason why you couldn't put it at the top of, say, power poles, produce energy, come down, put it into the line. It helps supplement everything. Uh, there'd be some great ways to do it. People could hide these things easier. It would look like a flagpole. I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of different ways that we could do that. Solar, move it out of the fields, put it on top of buildings, put it over parking lots so that it provides shades for cars, keeps the parking lot cooler. You'd have a net effect of while the sun's there beating down, you're producing electricity, but you're not heating up the ground as much. Therefore, when it gets cooler at night, those surfaces cool much more quickly because they're off the ground and they're not absorbed into the ground temperature. Therefore, keep cooling the city faster, meaning less heat island effect in a city. So, hey, there's ways of doing this. We just have to all think outside the box, and that's the whole idea of my program. To get you to think outside the box. Why do we have to think in straight lines? Somebody teaches you something, don't deviate. Don't try to find something better. Don't look to the side and go, gosh, hey, that might actually be a better way of doing this. Um, we don't want that. No, we want to be single-minded, single-focused, hive mind. We're all doing the same thing. Uh, Wait a minute, that's no fun. Who wants to do that? Because I sure don't. That's not the point of what I'm here for. I'm here to get everybody to try to think outside the box. Um, Pulling solar farms into the cities and putting them on tops of buildings, especially over top of Walmarts, over the parking lots, over top of parking garages, on the sides of the buildings that primarily face the sun. All sorts of things could be done with uh, solar panels, wind. Again, if you go vertical, it takes up much less space. It can be on the top of a power pole. It could be scattered around the cities in different places, all producing some power. Could be on the top of a cell phone tower. It could be a tower that the cell phone stuff is attached to. I don't know. I'm not the one to say, but hey, it's an idea that we should think about and we should look at. And all options should be on the table, um, is what I'm saying. You don't take something off the table. But the giant windmills that chop birds and we have no place to dispose of them when they're done, um, hey, we could we could replace them, move them into the cities if they were like in a helix format instead. Uh, I think that would be a far better way of a far better use of our land. Next one, ah, you know, sooner or later we'll have to get rid of coal. Sooner or later we'll have to get rid of gas-fired power plants. For now, they're necessary, but we should think of them as a bridge to the next age of nuclear power. And that's really what I would like to get into is that we have some great ideas for nuclear power plants. Um, Produces piles of energy in a small area, and that's the way we ideally should do this. So I found an article, and this is a little bit ago, unfortunately. But I was digging through and I found this article, and I'm going, that might actually be pretty cool to talk about. I think we should actually do this. So let's look at what's going on in Illinois. So Illinois has a nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plants are making the headlines in Illinois, but lawmakers don't lift the moratorium. Now, what's funny about this is that Illinois generates more electricity from nuclear power than any other state in the country, but some say it isn't enough to meet the state's needs, and it really isn't, unfortunately. It's not. We need more and more energy. We need it because people have electric cars. Where do we get the electricity from electric cars? Oh, yeah, that's right. Gas, coal. That's wonderful. Let's get more of those things in. If you hate the other stuff, let's keep the nuclear out of it, and we'll just do the other things. Or we'll do wind farms and solar farms. And what we'll do is we'll take the land that had food growing on it, and we'll take those lands that had food growing on it, and we'll convert those to solar farms and windmills, so you can't harvest food on it anymore, and the cost of food goes up, the price of energy goes up because wind and solar aren't as efficient, and we'll all benefit, right? Okay, let me throw a little more sarcasm on there. I love throwing sarcasm in. Sarcasm's a fun thing. Sometimes you can't have enough. Sometimes you can have a little too much. Okay, I don't think we can have too much, but anyway. Legislation would have lifted the legislation that they were working on would have lifted the moratorium on building large-scale nuclear facilities. Failed to get through the Illinois General Assembly this spring. Nuclear energy is safe, efficient, essential for stable energy grid, lower costs to our consumers, said the bill's sponsor, State Rep Sue Rezin, Republican from Morris, Illinois. It's time to move forward and finally end the ban on nuclear energy. Now, this is what's great. I love this. 2023, Illinois lifted a partial moratorium on nuclear power development specifically for small modular reactors, SMRs. And I'm all for SMRs. Sign me up. Especially if we get the thorium versions of them running, because burns the fuel more efficiently and produces less waste. And you can scatter them out around and put them more where you can secure them easier because they're smaller. So it's a great idea. The governor, J.B. Pritzker, said that he would be open to expanding the nuclear power in the state. We're looking forward to have a bill come to my desk that would allow us to expand the options for nuclear in the state of Illinois. But it has to be done the right way, says Pritzker. Of course. You want it to be safe. The SMRs can be safe and mass produced, lowering the cost because they are much smaller than producing 4,000 gigawatt places like they've got going on down in Georgia. I have my brother-in-law is working on the one in Georgia. So it's going to be massive. I think ultimately they're going to produce like 6,000 gigawatts of energy. You're talking just servicing a huge area. But it's a massive facility. But we'll get to the point of this one. It says, but David Kraft, director of Illinois-based Nuclear Energy Information Service, said, in light of President Donald Trump signing an executive order which effectively gut the regulatory power of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, there is no right way. That's not what the president did. The president did sign an executive order to ease up on things so that it would make it easier to get through the regulatory process. In other words, get rid of some forms. Let's get these things approved. Make sure that they're built right. And that's what my brother and my brother-in-law and my sister, who used to do this, some of this, a great engineer in her own right, and that's what they're there for. They're to build and make these things safer. So this guy doesn't want to do it because Trump, and he made a point of it and made sure they killed the bill in Illinois because Trump made the the process of getting through the regulatory process of getting things started so you could even produce one, instead of taking years to get through the regulatory process to get a nuclear power plant started, he changed it so it could be done in a much shorter time frame. Didn't mean they were going to be less safe, but you look at this guy, he's going, there's no right way. We got to stay away from this. It's like, no. This is where, and I don't want to say it, but the Trump derangement syndrome isn't just gone absolutely nuts. The things that would benefit the constituents of Illinois, which then if you're producing enough energy, you could sell it to Iowa or Indiana, Wisconsin, Missouri. Wait a minute. That's selling excess electricity, allowing the state of Illinois to benefit the state of Illinois, the people of Illinois. Oh, wait a minute. This is where it doesn't make sense. And then that was where back in, oh gosh, I think this would have been back in 1985. Might have been 84. But I was working for my brother, and I was just learning business and how to program and work with businesses. And I came up with the idea, after listening to people talk and giving them ideas and them rejecting some really good ideas, you realize that if things make sense, it won't get done in business. And that's my rule. And I just sort of followed it. If it makes sense, it won't be done. Reducing the number of people in the federal government, which would lower the budget and lower other things, and make it easier to get through all the budget, the pieces of the federal government. If you had fewer people working there, that makes sense. But because of that, nobody at the federal government, especially the bureaucrats, wants to do that. Cost them their job. Well, it should cost them their job. Sorry. Lots of them should lose their job. He added that current reactors are showing signs of aging, and new reactors would require greater oversight during the startup phase. And with the reduced regulatory oversight, neither will be safe. BS. All Trump did was helped get it so that people could get through the process of getting things started. It doesn't mean they're going to make them less safe. They want to make them safe. You want to know what happens if a nuclear power plant melts down and you just poison and kill a lot of people? See, do you think the power plant wants that? The power company wants that? You think the designers of that plant wanted that? Absolutely not. They don't want that. Kills business. And there's my little friend. That is Sassy, my little companion, while my wife is in the Philippines. So the guy is feeding everybody a line of bull, and this reporter is just accepting it. So who do we have writing off and signing off on this? Do we even say it says that the center square. Maybe we'll have somebody at the end of this. A nuclear facility in central Illinois is making headlines as an agreement was just announced between Facebook's parent company and Constellation Energy that involves Clinton Nuclear Power Plant that was set to close in 2 years. Meta has reached agreement to keep it running for another 20 to increase the surge in electric demand for artificial intelligence. As we embarked on an understanding to help grow the nuclear energy in the U.S., we have heard across the ecosystem that existing nuclear power plants will not be able to stay online indefinitely without partners' investments that help existing power operating license and increase generation capacity, said Meta. So Meta is going to do that. And wow, no author to this. So the author didn't even stand up and question. Maybe it is. Oh, okay, the story, Kevin Besler. Kevin, you didn't even ask the guy the right questions when you talked to him. When you asked this gentleman, David Kraft, for his feedback on this, you accepted the BS he fed you. No one wants it. It's no different. Do you really think the airlines want airplanes hijacked? No, they don't. So what happened on 9/11, which is a horrible tragedy, where we lost 3,500 plus lives that day? Airlines didn't want that. They were going to beef up security. But hey, what did our federal government do? This is where I have my beef with George Bush. George Bush goes, oh, let's create the TSA. We'll create the Homeland Security. We'll merge a bunch of agencies into one. You know what? Still have the FBI, still have the CIA, still have the NSA, still have... And I can go on the list of all these three-letter agencies that run different security things and do different police actions. They didn't leave. And they weren't combined. All you did was created the TSA and slowed up the process when you could have sit down and you guaranteed that the airlines would have all sat down and they were going to sit down the next day and go, oh, God, we can't have our planes doing this again. We need to change things. And they would have changed it on their own. Now, maybe ticket prices might have gone up a little bit. But we wouldn't have created another 75,000 jobs throughout the United States for no reason at the federal government level. And I believe it's actually higher than that. I don't remember. But Kevin, you didn't even bother to deal with David Kraft properly. Because David Kraft gave you a line and you accepted it. And then promoted it and ran it through. You should have been sitting there. Do you really think that the agencies and everything that wants to build these things so that they can have more, and they want a building that has an accident, ruins their reputation, then puts them out of business? You really think that that's what they want? Absolutely not. So David, you did all the constituents in Illinois a disservice by going against this because you don't like Donald Trump. I've talked to my brother-in-law about what this is. He's excited because now new projects are starting to open up for the company he works for. And we're going to see a boom in nuclear energy. Unfortunately, it still takes time to build these things. And so while we get the process started, it's still 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road before we get a lot of these things online and working with the grid. And even then, we've got to change our grid and prepare for it. We have to get the right transmission lines up in the right areas, know where we're going to position these things, and that takes planning. But we need to plan on this so that we don't have a disruption in the grid. That's why I like the SMRs. you space them out enough, but have them overlap each other enough that they can all back one another up. When you take one offline for servicing, the other ones are replacing it and providing the energy into that other area. And you're never down. So you can actually have the whole circle and the whole grid out there operating as one. When you have one big facility and you lose a major chunk of line, you can't bring up parts of it. With SMRs, you can scatter them around, and now they can all feed into a different part of the grid that wasn't taken out by that disrupted a different reactor. So there's massive benefits to the SMRs. There's ways of doing all of this. Again, we have to think outside the box instead of staying in the box that everybody wants to put us in. Box, nuclear power, bad. Why? Because there was a minor leak at 3 Mile Island because some people made a mistake and didn't understand what was happening, and it led to a partial incident at 3 Mile Island. Then they're going, oh, well, there was the massive thing that happened because you only really got 3. Chernobyl. Oh, we're all afraid of Chernobyl. Chernobyl had Chernobyl had a bad design. The new people running that plant, and this is the story, this is the thing that I've found out through the years, is that it was a different group of people that were brought in to take over and watch over the thing. And then they told the engineers, you got to run this test. And there were things saying, don't ever run this test. If you do this particular type of test, it will melt the reactors down. No, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. That just isn't going to happen. And force the engineers to run the test. Well, let's see. There was a meltdown. Kind of lost a city. Made a big mess. But remarkably enough, the wildlife in that area is coming back, and it's coming back stronger than ever. It takes time. But that was that incident. Bad. Could have been prevented had certain people not commanded other people to do something they knew they shouldn't do. Fukushima. Hit by a tsunami. Good portion of the building all survived it. Unfortunately, it did knock it offline enough that it's cooling the stuff, the motors and everything to keep the water cool and keeping everything flowing like it should was knocked offline. There was no backup energy for it. The reason there was no backup energy is because of where they put their backup generators, which happened to unfortunately be on the ocean side of the building. When you're on the ocean side of the building and you get a tsunami coming, what's the first thing that's going to happen? There they went. Their backup generators ended up 2 or 3 miles inland. Wasn't a small tsunami, sorry. Shoved it inland. No way of keeping it cool. Meltdown. Fortunately, not as bad as it could have been. Still, it's bad. But a major nuclear incident, they know how to keep and prevent these things from happening. That's not being taken out of the regulations. The only thing that Donald Trump signed into the whole process was to speed it up and start telling the NRC they need to start approving things. Again, where do we get our brains? What are we thinking? I swear to God that at points in time we don't. But we need to get nuclear power. We need to get nuclear energy in. We get these things into place, and we expand nuclear, find better ways to put solar into the cities instead of out in the farmlands or cutting down forests, which is another pet peeve. Hey, let's save the environment. We're going to save the environment. We're going to cut down the trees. For what? A solar farm. What about the wildlife? You don't need any wildlife out there. We just need solar panels. So what if we have to cover, an entire county with solar panels just to produce energy for the state of Michigan? Or that would just be maybe the lower portion of Michigan. Don't worry about it. We'll destroy farmland. We'll destroy the forests and get rid of the wildlife so we can have solar farms all over the place. You environmentalists, it crack me up. You think we need to go solar, we need to go electric, and we need to do all these things, and yet you destroy the environment in the name of trying to save the environment. Because go out and tour a solar farm. Go stand out in a big area where the windmills are running. You tell me. You're short-sighted. Extremely short-sighted. Solar farms over parking lots, over tops of buildings. If you do it right, it's going to keep the environment cooler. That'll get rid of the heat island effect. Now, the only place you can't really put a solar farm and that is over an airport. I mean, there's a lot of tarmac there. There's a lot of concrete holding heat during the summer. I'm sorry. You figure you're going to get a plane to land underneath a solar farm? I don't think so. Yeah, you might be able to get it over top of the building and over top of the terminal, but your runways are exposed. So you're not going to succeed there. But you've got parking lots, you've got tops of buildings, you've got all sorts of places you can hide solar farm. I've heard of some solar panels that you can put on the sides of buildings. They now work on a vertical fashion. If you can get to the point where you can get those see-through and you can put those on the sides of buildings so that the people working inside can still see out, bingo. Awesome. But let's find better ways to do these things. And that's the whole point of this. Think outside the box, folks. I'm square enough as it is. Of course, my belly would say I'm round. And I'm working on that. I started a journey on to give the carnivore diet a 90-day try. And I've lost 25 pounds. Actually, almost 30 pounds as of this morning. Almost 30 pounds since Mother's Day of this year. I don't eat as much. I eat 2 meals a day. And I don't feel like snacking. So I'll talk about that in another one. But it's been fun. But thanks for listening, folks. Hope you liked it. Enjoy. Please please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. So appreciate all of you. Have a great evening, and we'll see you on the flip side.